Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. This evening, we are delving into another aspect of outlining, and outlining is the second step of the voice blueprint. So let's talk about understanding the parts of a book. We talked about the importance of outlining, why you should outline, and how that helps you as a writer. So this evening, we'll be talking about the different parts of a book because if you outline, you have to know the different parts that you're actually outlining, right? So before we delve into that, let's go before the Lord in prayer before we begin. So, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for allowing us to have another opportunity to pray, to come before you, to talk about different things that are critical to being a ready writer. God, we just ask that you have your way through and through, God. Just flow through me and allow me to decrease so that your spirit and that your wisdom and that your love and that your heart and that your guidance supersedes anything that may be trying to surface in me. God, I want my flesh to completely be decreased so that your will, your word, and your ways and your message takes precedence. So, God, we just ask right now that every person who is listening, who's tuned in, and or even if they're catching the replay, God, we pray that they're able to receive from you, God, in a way that it is helpful for where they are going and the pace that they are going through in their journey, God, as being a ready writer. So I just thank you, love you, and honor you. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right. I am super excited to continue our discussion because this is one of the parts that I love the most. I love going through books. I love, as much as I am creative, I enjoy talking about structure and organization. So delving through the parts of the book is very important. And then you may be thinking, well, why are we talking about parts of a book? Well, in order for you to outline, you need to know the parts you're actually outlining. It's not just about the chapters. Most people, when they think outline, they think introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, but it's more than that. There are three main parts of a book, and I want to go a little deeper into each of those areas. So first, we have the front matter, we have the body matter, and then we have the back matter. So front matter, body matter, back matter. Those are the three areas that are important to understanding how to structure or how to organize your book. So let's talk about what the front matter is, and then we'll go into some detail about each of those areas. So the front matter essentially comprises of the preliminary pages of your book. So those are the pages that appear in the front before the main text. And when I say the main text, I mean before your chapters. So you have your title page, your copyright page, your dedication page, if any, or like this book belongs to, a table of contents, forward, preface. And so those are just some of the areas in the front matter. I know sometimes people include an epigraph, and that's optional as well. But let's delve into what each of these areas are. So your title page essentially contains your book's title, subtitle, the author's name, and the publisher's information. So let me grab some books to show you an example as we kind of go through this. So I'm going to use this book, Publish Your Vision. So of course, we've got Write Your Vision, Publish Your Vision, and Brand Your Vision. Write, publish, and brand. And I showed you guys these books. I'm very, very excited about these books, but let's talk about Publish Your Vision. So the title page, I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is the title page. It has the title of the book. It has the author and the editor information, or it may sometimes have the subtitle and the publisher's information at the bottom. I can show you another book. See how it looks a little different. Okay. So this is The Journey Home by Beverly Edwards. And this is her title page. You see her title right here, The Journey Home. Then you see her subtitle, Revealing the Importance of Self-Prioritization and Self-Love for Busy Women on a Transformative Journey. She is the author, and it shows you who it was edited by. And then there's the publisher information. So not all books show who the book's been edited by, and that's okay. Some do, some don't. Have another book here, and I'm really, really excited about this book. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off on that one. I'm going to talk about that book a little later. But just wanted to show you a little variation amongst the two books. So that is the title page, and it includes the book's title, subtitle, author name, perhaps the editor's name, and then the publisher's information. So we've seen those pages many times before. We just may not have known what it was called. Now, your copyright page, that is the next page. It contains copyright information, like if your book is a 5th edition, 10th edition, any publication data, your ISBN, LCCN, copyright information. I think I said that, and any legal notices. So here is the copyright page on my book. And it looks pretty similar to the same copyright page in Sister Beverly Edwards' book. Very similar. You see who it's copyrighted to, Beverly Edwards. You see her ISBN. You see the publisher information, Vision Publishing House. And it just basically says that this book is what this book is established to do. And it protects her and says, no part of this book can be duplicated. So it contains that information in the legal notices that you need. So the next part of the front matter, you also have a dedication. So in my book, I dedicated this book to every aspiring author and creative visionary. And I just said, it's time. So in my other book, The Write Your Vision, the dedication is, who did I dedicate that to? To visionaries whose vision light the path. Oh, I can't read upside down. To the visionaries whose visions light the path of possibility. To the creatives whose imagination knows no bounds. To the writers whose words shape worlds. This book is dedicated to you. May your vision find its voice, your creativity shatter ceilings, and your words resonate far beyond the page. So that was my dedication. And it's a little different. It's a little longer than usual. Now look at this one here, that we can compare the difference. You see, it has a lot shorter. To every aspiring author and creative visionary, and that's okay. There is no specific way you have to do your dedication. So this one for Beverly Edwards, to every woman who desires to embrace her authentic self. It's a shorter one. It's fine. Most dedications are short, as they should be. And again, it doesn't have to be short or long, but it's okay. Most of them are. Mine was just a little long for this one. Okay, so then you also have what's known as your epigraph. Now, an epigraph is simply a quote or a scripture or a saying that you want to include in the beginning of your book. Now, I don't have one for these 3 books here. I don't have one for these, the Write, Publish, and Brand Your books, but Sister Beverly Edwards has one in her book. And so I'm just using her book as an example here as we go through this. She has a quote that says, "Home is where the heart is, Pliny the Elder." So that is an epigraph that starts at the beginning of her book. I know some people have scriptures, some people may have quotes, and that's completely fine. You can have it, you don't have to have it. It's up to you. You can put a short poem there. Whatever you want to do is totally fine, but it's just something that really allows the reader to connect with the theme of your book. So it should be something that is related. So you see how she had in hers, home is where the heart is. I'm sorry. So she has her dedication here. So you see her copyright page. Let me just go through this again. So you see her title page. Then you see her copyright. Then you see her dedication. And then right after that, you see her epigraph. So home is where the heart is. And you see how that connects to the book, The Journey Home. So it aligns the reader's focus onto what they can kind of expect as they turn the page. So here is something that's really cool, because after dedication is your table of contents. Now, I'm really, really excited because there's many ways you can do your table of contents. Typically speak, it starts with the introduction and then the chapters, and then, ends with acknowledgments about the author. So look at Sister Beverly's table of contents. You see how her table of contents starts with a different letter, and that's because she took the word journey home, the journey home, and she did a chapter based on each letter, which is really, really cool. I love that. And so let's look at this one. Write the vision, or write your vision. You see how this table of contents looks a little different? You see numbers in this one. So you have a section that says how to use the book, introduction, and then you have the 4 chapters identified. Articulate your vision, connect with your target audience, craft your message, and take action. Now that's very similar to the next book, which is, let's see, you see that? Very similar. 4 chapters, slightly different, because this is focused on publishing. So prepare for self-publishing, navigate the self-publishing process, launch and promote your book, and take action. So that's for this one. Now for the brand your vision book, this table of contents is a little different. You know how to use your book, brand your influence. Expand your influence, amplify your authority, sustain your impact, and take action. So it also has the how to use your book in the introduction at the beginning as well. So each table of contents is a little different, but they typically contain the same information. Chapters, the introduction, about the author, if there is one, and it pretty much just outlines your book. Now, it doesn't usually say on the table of contents like title page or copyright page or dedication. It doesn't have all of that on there. So the things that precede the table of contents are typically not on there. It's just what comes after the table of contents. It's usually on the table of contents. So next, you have your foreword. Now, I am actually going to see if I can find one of the books on my... The first one that I can grab. And this book is by Pastor Marcia Williams, Women in Pursuit. She has a mentorship program. This is her beautiful logo for her mentorship program. And we added a title at the top for her book as well. So her book, oh, and I actually forgot to talk about endorsements. There's something else, but I'll get to that in just a second. So you see how her title page is a little different. You see that? And you also see her dedication page, a lot different. See that? And that is her epigraph. So it has a quote and also has a picture. And that's her table of contents. And here is her foreword. So her book has a foreword in the beginning, and then it goes into her introduction. So a foreword essentially is written by someone other than the author. So what it does is it provides context or praise or insights about the book. So this was written by a pastor who knows her quite well and just shed light on who Pastor Marcia is. So some books have forewords, some do not, and it's okay. It's not necessarily essential, but it's good to have if you can have it. It's kind of like when you see those books and they'll say foreword written by Oprah or foreword written by Tony Evans. It just kind of makes you think like, oh, wow, So it does kind of help boost credibility, and it helps you to really connect with the author to see, that they have backing of someone that's influential. So that usually is what the intention is as well. So one of the things that I didn't mention is endorsements. So that's usually at the beginning. If you have someone who wants to endorse your book, you've seen them sometimes on covers or on the back. It'll say like, I give this 2 thumbs up, or everybody needs a copy of this book, or, you'll see kind of like those quotes like on the cover sometimes or at the top on the book cover. But essentially the endorsements is the same thing. There's people's thoughts about the book, and they're telling you pretty much why you should purchase it. They'll say like, it's my pleasure to get to know this person. This you accomplish da 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 da, or this person is so and so, and this book will help bless you with, So it's pretty much them sharing their experience and their thoughts about the book or the author. And so the endorsements, or sometimes you'll see it say praise for the author, or it'll say endorsements or something like that. So not every book has it. Put this over here. And it's okay if you do have it, and it's okay if you do not. It's not like a deal breaker. The next thing is the preface. So the preface is written by the author, and it essentially explains the book's purpose, the scope, or the acknowledgments. Now, I do have a book, but it's just not right in front of me. Here we have a preface. Let me see if I can get to it. Give me 1 second. I think this one has a preface, if I'm not mistaken. Not all my books that we've done have preface. So here's the book by Crystal Love, and this is just the inside part. Her sleeve isn't on here, but here's some of her endorsements. This is a really thick book. You see that? But she has a lot of endorsements for her book, and then here's her title. So, and as you can see, her copyright page, and then her dedication. And then you see her epigraph. Philippians 4:3, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There's her table of contents. So all of this is the front matter. And her table of contents is pretty long. So her table of contents spans 3 pages. And then she's got her forward. And she does have a preface. Okay. I wasn't sure if she had a preface in her book, because I know many people do not. So I want you to hear a little bit of how this sounds different from a forward. So again, I mentioned that a forward is written by someone else on behalf of the author. So it talks about, for example, this says, my name is Darlene Curry. I'm a radical lover of God, a wife, mother, creative. Crystal Love is one of my beloved spiritual daughters. She's been adopted by heart. She's a delight to my heart. If I could describe her, I would use the word tenacious. She has a passion for this, and so she really talks about her experience with Crystal, and that's what Darlene Curry does in this book, as we affectionately call Mama Darlene. She talks about when you read the book Finding Normal and how it'll benefit you. So she's one of the co-pastors of a Seek His Face Ministries. So that is the forward. Now the preface is written by the author. And so the intention of the preface is to explain the book's purpose or the scope, or any acknowledgments at that time. Not to be confused with the acknowledgement section, but this is more focused on who the author wants to either mention. Let's say like this book is about this, and it was inspired by this person who helped me do this. So it's not so much accolades, but it's just more so you're acknowledging who may have helped you write the book and why you wrote it, or who contributed to it. But it's not like a thank you for this, thank you for that. That's more of what the acknowledgement page is, where you're writing to the person. This preface is written to the reader. The acknowledgement is written to the person you're actually acknowledging. So that's where the difference is. So for example, the preface says, many days I prayed, I just want to be normal, but didn't understand the magnitude of what I wanted. What drove me to say this? And where did that thought come from? Did I really want to have a typical life? The simple answer to this question was no. But in hindsight, that answer was a bit more complicated. What I truly desired was the life that God predestined and planned for me. That was my normal. But at the time, I didn't know it. God had a plan for my pain. So that's how the preface opens up. So she talks a bit, and it's just like a page or two. So the preface starts here, and then you have 2 more pages. So I'm going to read the last paragraph. When she talks a bit about normalcy and understanding life, she says, regardless of circumstance, God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Knowing this creates a satisfying resolve. Our normal can never supersede the power of his strength. But sometimes it takes the experience of your own journey to understand this truth. Through glimpses into my past, this book captures my journey throughout the discovery, appreciation, and acceptance of my normalcy, with attempts of helping you to recognize and receive yours. pray that your journey reveals the strength of God's power and the beauty of your normal. So that's how the preface closes. And it has scriptures in there as well. So then she gives, this is another section. She gives special resources where you can scan and an additional page of resources as well. Then she asks you some questions before you get started. Oh, and then she's got some more resources for you. Then she goes into her introduction. So I'm going to pause right here because the introduction is actually part of the body matter. So just want to do a quick recap of everything that's in the front matter. You have the title page, the copyright page, the dedication, table of contents, epigraph. Actually, wait, let me go back. I'm going to say it in order. Title page, copyright page, dedication, epigraph, if you have one, table of contents, forward, and your preface. And I actually forgot to say before the title page, you have your endorsements, if any. So let's do this again. Endorsements, if you have some, title page, copyright page, dedication, if you have some, epigraph, if you have one, table of contents, forward, and preface. So we just walk through each of those. So I know I spent a good portion on that. So that is important to note in the front matter. Now, let's talk about how the front matter is important. So we talked about how the front matter has different elements and it really just opens up the book. But essentially it serves as an introduction. Now, it's not the introduction. And I know that's why it confuses people because they're like, shouldn't the introduction chapter be there? No, it's not in the front matter, but the front matter serves as an introduction to the book, which provides essential information and context for the reader. So it really sets expectations, establishes credibility, and it helps the readers navigate the content going forward. Have you ever gone to a bookstore and you just kind of flip through the pages and you want to just read a little bit more about the book and the person to decide if you wanted to purchase that book or read the, some introductory matter? You can, it's very helpful when it's tempting to do that. And also you can include other elements like I showed you, the QR codes. So add some visuals to the front matter. That is something that you can essentially add to the book if you would like to. Bonus material or something, or just kind of say, hey, we have an audio version that you can listen to while you're reading, or, little things like that can assist with the book before the person gets started. So that's all about the front matter. That's the beginning. Now, let's talk about the body matter. So we had the front matter. Now we're doing the body matter. That's the second part. And then we'll do the back matter as well. But let's delve into the body matter. Okay. So the body matter essentially is, what are the chapters. So but it's really the meat or the main content of the book. You think about a hamburger, it's the meat in the middle. So the top bun is the front matter, the meat in the middle, with all the toppings and all of that stuff is the body matter. And then the bottom bun is the back matter. So let's talk about the components of the body matter. So you've got your chapters, you've got your sections, you've got, or parts, you've got your subheadings, you've got various illustrations, you may have tables or charts that really help to explain the book. Now, I don't want to get confuse you because you can also have tables and charts in your appendix as well, which is in the back matter. But I'm more so referring to tables that are intricate to the chapters themselves, not reference pages. I'm talking about, like, for example, if you have a chapter and it's like, okay, a math book or something, and it's like, let me teach you how to do addition, and it may have a chart inside of it. So that chart is intricate to the chapter. It helps just to relay information for you, just like when you do bullets and bullet points or little tables or outlines. Sometimes in chapters they'll have those, or they'll say like, here are 5 things you need to know. So that could be like a little a visual for you as well. So tables can do that, pictures, all of those things. So let's talk about chapters and what they are. Most people know what a chapter is. So let me show you my book, Write Your Vision. And from looking at the table of contents, you can see that there's 4 chapters. And this is how chapter 1. Actually, let's start with the introduction. This is the introduction. Actually, you know what? I forgot to mention this. along that process before they actually dig in, and this would be considered in the front matter. It tells you how to use the book. So when I showed you in this book how they were QR codes and special resources, they help you before you get started. So it's similar to that, how to use this book. So it's kind of like some reference information. And then I end with QR codes for people to join the community where we can add further support and just say hello if they want to connect with us and continue dialogue. So anyway, now we start the introduction. This is the first chapter of the body matter. And then as you can see, the chapters kind of continue on out. And then you have your chapter 1, like I showed you in the table of contents, articulate your vision. And then you have, of course, your chapter 2. So here's an example of like an illustration or QR code or things like that are integral or intertwined throughout the chapters. Because I put elements or things throughout the book to help the reader, because this is a book that's very hands-on. So chapter 3, craft your message. And then you've got chapter 4, which is take action. So you see those bullet points under there? So that would essentially be a way to kind of break up the paragraph form so that your eye can quickly see. I like to use bullet points because it makes it easy. It kind of breaks it up a little when you are trying to, let me see. It breaks it up a bit when you're trying to kind of break up the continual paragraph flow, So I wanted to ensure that you could see how the chapter breakdowns are or how they look. So chapters are major divisions that organize the content thematically or chronologically. So let's take a look at this book, The Journey Home. And I was telling you about how her chapters are aligned based on each letter of The Journey Home. So she has her introduction, of course. I strongly recommend introductions. And then we have the letter J. Just pause, just be, just breathe. That's our first chapter. O, organize your thoughts. And then she gives you a mind mapping template as well. U, understand, unlock, unfold. So these are the letters in the journey home. R, you see, Jour, rest, reset, reframe, and release. So it continues on through. Now, when you look at this book, Crystal Love book, Finding Normal, and again, I was telling you this is just the inside part. The jacket's not on here, but this is just the inside part. So it's in grayscale, but the actual jacket cover has color on it. So we start with her introduction, of course. And then she also goes into, all right, so here's her chapter 1 right here. But she provides you some resources before you get started, actually. Each chapter, she has something in front of it. So here it says resources for chapter 1. So you can have the information you need before you officially start chapter 1. And you see how chapter 1 has different subheadings? So that is something that you can have, sections or subheadings that break down your book. So here is, let me see if I can. Oh, here's an example here. You see that scrap of paper? So that is an illustration or an element in her book that displays something that she spoke on in her book about when her son had a scrap of paper. He wrote down when he gets older what he wants to become. So we decided to take that scrap of paper and create an image for her to include in the book. Then after the chapter ends, she has a section that says reflect/journal. So that is what all of that is for chapter 1. Then we move into chapter 2. And she's got resources for chapter 2. She has a lot of resources for chapter 2. And then you go into it, pick up the pieces. So that's how her book is broken down. And so they just want to kind of provide a little variation of how the chapters are broken down. So essentially, your chapters are major divisions that organize your content thematically or chronologically. If it was a memoir, it would be like, this happened first, and the next chapter, then that happened, then, or it could be thematically, like, each chapter has its own theme. But again, when you know the vision of your book, your outline will follow suit. And when you understand the type of book you're writing, then your outline will be adjusted based on that. So I want you to start thinking about how you can organize your content. And just remember that the chapters are kind of like the big pieces of meat, and then the sections or the subheadings, rather. I often refer to them as subheads or subheadings because underneath of each chapter, there could be smaller parts that you want to break it down. So, for example, if let's say chapter 1 is about food, you may have a subheading that says meats, and then another subheading that says vegetables. So it's breaking that down even more so that you can talk about certain areas related to food or nutrition. So it just helps the subdivisions just further organize the material, and it helps you to kind of get more specific so you can zone in on some of those details or specifics within that chapter and kind of have that ability to see how it all comes together. So it really helps with providing structure, and it helps to guide the reader through the different topics within each of your chapters. So some people call it sections, some people call it subheadings, some people call it that's another one, parts. Well, actually, let me take a step back. So when you have chapters, if they're a group of chapters, you can call them volumes. Although people don't always say volume, they rather say part, because when you think of volume, you think of book 1 is volume 1, book 2 is volume 2, but you can have a group of chapters to say this is part 1. You may say the beginning. I actually have a book where I broke it down into 3 phases or 3 parts, and each part had a bunch of chapters. So let me see if I can find an example of that. Because most books do not, they just go chapter by chapter. But if, let's say, there's certain phases in your life, like for example, before Christ, and then you have these 4 chapters that talk about things you've experienced before you came to Christ. And then it's like, when I came to Christ, and then it's like all these chapters, and you got married and you had kids and you got, so it's like you have 2 different parts, and that's okay because you're showing how a certain group of chapters within a certain part is different from another group of chapters, in a different part. So that's how parts can really help you differentiate between different things that are going on. It can be extremely helpful in memoirs. Or if there are, let's say you're teaching someone something, and let's say you want to teach them how to start a business, you may say this part is everything you need to know before you get started. And then you may have a few chapters that relate to the things that you need them to do. So each step could be its different chapter. And then it's like, all right, once the business is started, these are all the things you need to do. So each step could be a chapter within that part. And then the third part can say how to overcome challenges or how to overcome frustrations once you start your business and you want to give up. These are some chapters or steps that you can take to help you not give up. So you see how parts can be really helpful. So it can really help to identify different phases or different areas where you can group chapters together that have a commonality. So that's the chapters. Those are the sections, the subheadings, the parts. I mentioned also that you can have illustrations in your body matter and, visual elements like diagrams, images, charts, tables, graphs, things that essentially complement the text or provide context for the text. So, and I mentioned also tables. They can help with presenting data or information in the tabular format that makes it for clarity and for easy reference. So again, it's not the same as the appendix. That is more for like, if you want to reference something. I think of an appendix similar to like a concordance. When you read the word of God, you may see those little numbers, and then you take the number and then you go to the back, or you can look it up in the concordance. And what it does is it provides clarity on what you've read. But the actual, like when you have tables and images and diagrams, those are actually integral to reading it, meaning like it's heavily related to what you're actually reading. Whereas though the appendix is just providing like deeper information if you want to have clarity on something, or if you want to further expound on the meaning of something, that's kind of what it is. So it's like a reference. Whereas though illustrations or other visual elements or tables or diagrams are essential to actually reading that chapter. It's like if you read it, you may be like, huh? And then when you look at the chart, you're like, oh, that's what it's talking about. So it's kind of like just wanted to differentiate between those visual elements that are in the chapter in the body matter versus in the appendix in the end. So some things that you want to take into account when you're doing your body matter is ensuring that the content that you are arranging has a logical flow. I say all the time, talking about cooking, when you're baking a cake, you're not going to talk about, putting icing on the top and you haven't even put the flour in the bowl or the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients and mix it together. You can't talk about adding icing and glazing the cake or whatever, cutting it, and you haven't even made it yet. So you got to do step by step by step. So you want to ensure that there's a logical flow. You want to ensure that there's coherence. You want it to be what I like to call readability, that it makes sense as the reader is flowing through. So having things like those headings and the subheadings and the chapter titles and the visual aids really do enhance comprehension and engagement. And so that wraps up our section on the body matter. So I told you it was a lot this evening. So first, we had the front matter. Second, we talked about the body matter. And third, we're going to talk about the back matter. So let's talk about the role or the reason we have back matter. The back matter essentially includes elements that appear after the content of the book. So kind of makes sense, right? Front matter in the front, body matter like the middle, and the back matter at the end. So these are the elements that appear or that are included after all of your chapters. So, it usually, the goal for the back matter and the elements are to provide additional information, references, or closing remarks. So here are some common things you can notice in the back matter. A bibliography, or like a works cited, an index, a glossary, appendices, I'm saying that right, acknowledgments. I know some people put acknowledgments in the front. I tend to put them in the back. You may also see like about the author. And so those are some sections that you may notice. So let's delve into that. I'm trying to find a book here to show you some examples. There is one that has a bibliography, but I am hesitant to show only because it just came out. And you know what? I will go ahead and show you, but I'm going to cover up the front of the book because I want you to see what it looks like, but I don't want you to see the book yet. Okay. So here, for example, the bibliography, here are some references. So you see that there are a lot of references here. And I'm going to show you kind of how the pages look. So you've got a bunch of references. This was a dissertation initially. So she wanted to ensure that we included some references. Trying to do it this way so that you don't see the cover just yet. Also, we have, so she does not have an index, but essentially what an index you'll find are most like textbooks or books where they're teaching something and let's say you ever looked up, let's say you're studying for a test and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't read the chapter. So you try to go to the index to find, let's say you're studying cells and you may look up the word cells, and the index will show you every place in that book where the word cells is mentioned. So indexing can be very time consuming. So what it does is an index is an alphabetical list of terms, names, or topics with the corresponding page numbers for easy reference. And so if I didn't already state this, but the bibliography or your works cited page in an essay would be a works cited, but your bibliography essentially lists the sources cited or consulted or referenced during the research process. So this book here started off as a dissertation for a doctoral program. And so she wanted to turn her dissertation into a book, which I think is fantastic. So I'll show you more about that and talk about that a bit more. But I just wanted to highlight this without showing until we officially kind of push the book out. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. Anyway, so in talking about the bibliography, the index, another area is the glossary. And I believe this book has a glossary as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. This is the glossary. So you see the different words on here and how they are defined, because there are a lot of words. And it may not be easy for the reader to understand. So there's our glossary, and they are in order, by alphabetical order. All right. So we also have appendices. Okay. And appendices are actually include the surveys that were included, or the surveys that were taken for this book. So for her data, she actually had surveys. She polled different people. And so these are some of the questions that she asked, so that the reader can refer to it to say, oh, okay, now I see why she included this information in her book. This is the actual survey that was taken by those who she interviewed. So that's where the appendices come in. So I'm going to put this book over here because I don't want to accidentally show the cover just yet. But the acknowledgments here is another section. Now, most books that I have done for people do have acknowledgments. So Sister Beverly Edwards, The Journey Home, her book has acknowledgments. She's thanking people for how they have impacted her and how they've helped her to get her book out. And of course, as you see already, about the author section. Crystal Love, Finding Normal. And again, this is just the inside part of her book. The book cover is not, I don't have the book cover on here. She has acknowledgments in her book. And I love this because they're long. With the acknowledgments, I tell people, you don't have to try to shorten them. You can have as many as you want. And she dedicates a paragraph, about a paragraph, to different people. Like one's her mom, her dad, her husband, and then, different people that are influential to her. And I love how she does her brothers, her grandmother, and then her husband at the end. So it's a beautiful thing to see how she's really, really honoring those who she cares for. It's such a beautiful thing. And then we have our about the author. Now, if you notice, this one does not have her picture on it. And that was intentional. She didn't want her picture on this one. She just wanted her bio at the end. And we see her picture on the back of the book and on the front. So some people don't necessarily want their picture in the bio because they already have the picture on the front or the back, and they don't want them in both places. And it's just a stylistic thing. So essentially, just to kind of go back again, the bibliography, the sources cited or research that you've done for this book to take place, some of the research that's included. The index is an alphabetical list of terms, names, topics that have the corresponding page numbers for you as the reader to make easy reference. So the glossary defines all the key terms or specialized terminology that is used in your book. Your appendices are supplementary materials, like I showed you, the charts, the tables, or additional context that enriches the main text. So, for example, the dissertation that we did, the book that was turned into the dissertation that was turned into a book has in the appendices the survey that the people were actually given when they were interviewed. And then lastly, your acknowledgement. That section expresses the gratitude to individuals, to people, organizations who contribute to the book's creation, either directly or indirectly. It could be someone that has been a blessing to you in some form or fashion. So that still contributes to the book's creation because they've affected you or blessed you somehow. Also, I like to mention that about the author is something that is also in the back matter. It talks about the author and their accomplishments. It's like a biography of the author. The other thing many people don't always talk about is the afterword and the author's note. So the afterword is very similar to the forward, but it is after. It's the end, right? So one of the things I want to essentially kind of differentiate between the two, and it's a little bit more than just being one in the front, one in the back, but it is a concluding section of the book. It just kind of wraps it up, whereas though the forward more so introduces you to the person, the afterward kind of like brings it all together. It concludes it. It's kind of like, this person's awesome. This is why, as you can see, they're doing this with their life. This is why you should connect with them. So it's like it's still written by someone else other than the author, but it helps you to bring the person brings closure to the book and still highlights the person. Whereas though the forward kind of opens you up and introduces you to the person. So that is one of the main differences with that. And there are some other things that you can include in the back matter of the book as well. So some of you may or may not know, what an epilogue is. So that's not always common, but essentially what an epilogue is, it takes place, like, for example, those are more for fiction stories where it's kind of like following up on events that happen after the main plot, has ended. So let's say something happened in the story and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what happened next? So the epilogue essentially takes place in within the world of the story to kind of follow up on events after the main plot. So it kind of gives you a little bit of relief, a little bit, I'll say. Now, I typically say that, just to clarify a little, you can have an epilogue in a nonfiction book. It's just generally in fiction books, it kind of goes right after the last chapter in a work of fiction. So it really can help to explain like some of those events and kind of give like a current snapshot of where we are today, after the fiction book. Now, however, if it's a narrative nonfiction, like a memoir, autobiography, something like that, it can be beneficial for that as well. Again, but the main purpose is of the epilogue is to, serve as a comment or to bring conclusion to what has happened and kind of let you know how those events tie into where we are now, in a sense. So I kind of hope that, makes sense, because it gives additional, but separate details that are part of the main story or part of a speech or something like that. So it's not always used, but it has its place when needed. And then lastly, we also have what's called as an author's note. Now, with the author's note, it's the author's place to provide additional information. They can add additional statements or disclaimers, or talk about any conflicts of interest. They can talk about any ways to provide additional help. They may say, like, writing this book was hard for me, but I understand what it's like to go through. If you want to stay connected, let's talk, whatever. Excuse me. It can provide point of contact for interested readers. Talk about funding or people that want to, let's say, support their research. That is something that an author's note can include. It's really a place for the author to just kind of share what they want to share, any additional information. I say that doesn't fit anywhere else. It's kind of like when you write a little sticky note or a Post-it note and you give it to somebody. It's just a little something that you want to add to as well. So another thing is an abstract. You don't always see that, but an abstract is essentially a summary of points, and it's usually presented in like a skeletal form. I don't really want to get too deep into that, but that's essentially what an abstract is. And the abstract, forgot to mention, but it's usually at the beginning of scholarly journal articles or different um, um, different types of scholarly works cited pages. And I know that's not really typical of books, so I didn't really want to mention it. But now that I think about it, you sometimes see abstracts. It just depends. Someone did give me a manuscript that I knew was used for their academic in the academic space, but we took the abstract out and we actually took some information and infused it into the introduction so that it flowed better in more of a narrative way and for the book, for the reader, as opposed to in the academic space where the abstract was needed. So it just really kind of depends, because an abstract gives you that concise summary of the main book's points and arguments and the overall content before the professor or whomever or organization reads it. And usually people have that in their scholarly, journal articles. You actually see it sometimes on the back of books too. It just really depends. It just depends. But in the context of these books that we're talking about, they don't have abstracts. These books, just as some examples as we're going through, they do not have abstracts. So anyway, that is a lot of information. I know this has been a long night. Thank you for rolling with me this evening. So as we talked about just briefly, the front matter, we talked about the body matter, we talked about the back matter. And so let's talk about why you may need your back matter, and then we're going to close out. But the whole purpose of a back matter is essentially to enhance the reader experience. So you want to know the needs of your target audience, and the back matter is a place where you can provide those resources and areas for further exploration, where you can clarify any terminology or offer additional context to support any main arguments that you're presenting in your book or the narrative. So it's really supplemental and it's complementary. So understanding the components within the front, the body, and the back matter, I truly believe is crucial for authors if you're trying to write a book, because if you need to outline your book, you kind of got to know what the parts of the book are, so you know what you're outlining. So you can effectively structure your book and provide that seamless reading experience for your audience unless you actually know what your book is intending, or what you want in your book. And in order to know really what you want, you kind of got to know the parts of the book. So you can decide, I want this part, I want this part, I do want this part, I don't want this part. So I think that is extremely important. And so I pray that this has been helpful for you in some way. Like I said, I know that this was a lot, and you may be thinking, okay, great. Thank you for helping me understand the O part of the voice blueprint. So we've got 5 prongs: vision, outline, integration as it relates to the audio. The C is the collaborative organization, and the E is the enhancement. And so last week we talked a bit about the V, which is the vision, and we just broke that down into different areas of vision. And this week we're talking about outlining. So we talked about the importance of outlining yesterday, and now we're talking about the parts of a book so that can be effective, or so it can help you when you are doing your outline to have that awareness of the parts of a book. And so, as always, I always want to share that we do have our free ebook, which is called Speak Your Book, which helps you learn how to efficiently use the voice blueprint. And it breaks down those 5 steps. Many of you already have that free ebook. Some do not. So I just want to always make sure that that resource is available to you. And it helps you to use your voice to speak your book. And that's why we're talking about the O, step O, which is step 2 in the voice blueprint. So once again, thank you so much for joining this evening. If you have any questions or need additional support, we are very present here and ready to assist and help you throughout your endeavors. And as always, we'll definitely close out in prayer. So dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for your time, God. I thank you for blessing us to be a blessing to others, God. I thank you, God, that you've opened up doors and opportunities for us to serve people, God. You've blessed us with wisdom and knowledge and understanding, God, not just to keep or to hoard amongst ourselves, God, but to be a blessing to others, to show your love, God, to your people, to allow them, God, to see and to know and to feel and to communicate and to experience your heart in a very tangible way. So, God, help us to understand how outlining and understanding of it really helps us to take that vision that you've given us and to put it in place, God, to allow us to take the vision, the creative mindset, and to structure it in such a way that it provides a seamless reading experience for your people, God. Father, there's one thing to know the wisdom and to have it all bottled up in our mind, to understand the vision, but if we can't effectively communicate it in a way for others to understand, what really good is it to have that vision and we can't even do anything with it? It's like saying faith without works is dead. What good is it to have the faith but not have the works to show? What good is it to have the vision but not actually be able to implement it and to have others to really take it in and to understand what it is we're trying to communicate? So, Father, help us to hear, to not only know the message, but to be effective in our communication of that message. God, I just thank you so much for this time. And I thank you for being with us as we journey through this voice blueprint, God. Thank you for revealing additional insights, God. Thank you for just really shaking us up, God, and helping us to be obedient, to flow in alignment with what you have called us to do. In Jesus' mighty name. God, I thank you for everyone who may be listening, who may be catching the replay. And I just pray, Father God, that you be with them in Jesus' mighty name. Help them to be bold, help them to be courageous, help them to be strong, God. Help them to pick up their pen and write, or pick up their phone, pick up their voice recorder, whatever they need to do, God, to release what's inside of them. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for your time this evening. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue on the Ready Writer series. We have been rocking and rolling since February, and I look forward to continuing dialogue with you. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you want to talk about or anything you just want to share, feel free to comment below or send us an inbox, email, direct message, whatever you need to do to reach out to us. We are there to support you. Thank you so much for joining, and have a good night. God bless you.